No, you have enough.
That was a single family.
Yeah. You ended up with a guy that bought it.
Okay, and we're live. Alrighty, let's get started. Handling common listing objections, top page in the front. By the way, I've turned the air conditioner down, which will make it cooler in here, hopefully in a few minutes, okay? Handling common listing objections, the top 5 questions as we count them down from 5 to 1. Number 5, Floyd Wickman says, a stall is something the prospect says for whatever reason to A, hide the real reason, B, knock you off track, or C, blow off steam. A is correct. Number 4, listing objections are A, common, B, to be expected and prepared for, C, going to occur no matter how good your presentation is, or D, all of the above.
D.
When a seller has already talked to other brokers before, you ask, why didn't you list with them? What are you looking for in an agent? How are you comparing companies? Or D, all of the above, right? And some of you already know when all of the above is an option, that's the answer, okay? When competing for a listing, you should A, offer the sellers the highest price, offer the sellers the lowest commission, or offer the seller the most services.
C.
Thank goodness you all said C. I'm so happy about that. Number 1, when a seller wants to try a higher price just to see if they can get it, A, you're obligated to let them. You cannot tell prospective buyers what the seller is thinking. Or C, you should turn down the listing.
C.
I say
B.
yeah.
B.
Right.
Listen to Sophie.
What did you say?
With agency, you can't tell prospective buyers.
That's correct.
A.
Yes. B. Yes. Yes. When a seller wants to try higher than market price just to see if they can get it, you cannot tell prospective buyers. Now,
You're still obligated to let them know.
actually, you're not obligated to. It's optional for you. And that's what I like about real estate is everything is optional. If you don't like it, the price, you can actually decline the listing and just nicely say to them, you know what, it's the second mouse that gets the cheese. I'd rather be the second agent, you know, the mousetrap, first mouse, right? I want to be the second mouse. I want to be the second agent in to get the listing, right? So you can't deny it. Now, and we're going to explain number 1 in a little more detail because some of you are still looking a little perplexed that we said that. And I'm going to show you an example of that. So, before we go to the next page, I had some notes that I wrote down and some things that I wanted to cover and go over. So if you wouldn't just, if I could have your attention for a minute, and then we'll go back to the notes pages. There's a little allergy thing going on here, so kind of work with me. You might have to do that a few times. No, it's definitely allergy.
No, not
Yeah. Objections, concerns, or unanswered questions. You know, when we say the word objections, and we even have the word objections in the title of today's workshop, sometimes objections can be kind of a harsh word. So sometimes we like to call them unanswered questions. And I like the term unanswered questions a little better because that's truly what an objection is. See, some people perceive objections as something really negative, but how do you perceive unanswered questions? Not so negative, right? Well, something you can work with, right? I like the other term, concerns. These are just concerns that people have. When you get to the point when it's time for them to make a decision and they're not saying yes, whether you're working with a buyer or a seller, when you get to that point of the presentation, when it's time for them to make a decision and they're not saying yes, they have a what? They have a concern. They have an unanswered what? Question. Hold on a second. We have some. Jameson, how you doing? There are clipboards in the next room, and and you're welcome to sit there. It's totally fine. And here's a certificate for you. We'll hand it over to you. And so, at the very least, just go next door and grab a clipboard so you have all the info. Okay, so I just want you to recognize and understand that this is the point that we're at in the presentation. They have some objections, and here's another objection, and we're actually going to have an entire workshop dedicated to this just one objection because it's so important. And that is, well, that was great, John, we just want to think it over.
Right, they always say that.
Now, if they always say that, right, there are a couple of reasons why. Number one, we might need to do a more thorough presentation because they're saying that because they have what?
Unanswered questions.
They have unanswered questions. That's why they want to think it over. Do you really think in a million years that when you leave the house, they both sit at the kitchen table and go like this?
No.
And think it over? No. They move on with their day and they might talk about a few sentences about you and or what happened, and they're probably going to go with an agent who would either handle their objections or gave a better presentation, otherwise known as the other broker, right? That you may have lost the listing to. Now, you cannot survive in this sales business until you can learn how to change how they feel. You see, people will do what they feel like doing. And if someone has an unanswered question or a concern or an objection, the only way you're going to get them to change their actions is to change the way they feel about something. And the way you change the way someone feels about something is you make sure that all their concerns are handled and all their questions are answered, and or maybe you have to just kind of put it in a different way, phrase it in a different way, put it in a different light for them so that they can understand it, understand where you're coming from, understand where the market is coming from, understand where we're going with this, right? So those are some points. You see, it's your job to find the real reason. That's your job. See, I'm taking something very complex and I'm making it extremely simple. I like it that way. It's good for me too. I like simple. So what you do is you take something very complex psychologically, what's going on in their mind, and you make it real simple and you make it real easy by simply putting it in these terms. They have an unanswered question, and it's your job to do what?
Find out what it is.
Find out what it is. Find out what the reason is, and then do what Ken said. Right after you find out what the reason is, you offer them the solution, right? So the trick is, I've made a note here, the trick is to find the real reason, and the way that you find the real reason is you learn something. And what is it that you learn? To find the real reason.
You ask questions.
You ask questions, and another way of putting that, but I like your term better, I was going to say you learn dialogue, but you ask questions. But learning the dialogue is knowing which questions to ask and how to ask them, right? And then offering a solution afterward. Now, I want to talk about your competition for a minute. Your competition. Now, please, God bless you. Your competition is nothing to sneeze at, no. Your competition is not the 1,000 agents out there in the marketplace. That is not your competition. When you lose a listing to another agent, it's typically one agent. Your competition is typically maybe 4 to 5 agents in your entire marketplace. A lot of you people that go on listing appointments, a lot of shaking your head right now. Becky's shaking her head, oh yeah. And let me ask you a question. Do you know who those brokers are? You know who those agents are, right?
Yeah.
It's one sitting in the driveway while you're at the
Yes,
table.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you know who these people, it's not the 1,000 other agents out there. See, what you need to do is you need to learn the sneakers. You know what I mean by that? Learn the sneakers? No? Okay. Well, you probably heard this 1,000 times. Reminds me of a story of this salesman who goes camping, and he's out in the woods, and they're in there. He's out camping with his friend, okay? And they're in their sleeping bags, and they're over by the fire, and all of a sudden they're laying there right before they go to sleep, and they hear this growl come from the bushes, and they get nervous, and they both get up, they jump up out of their sleeping bags, and one of them, the first guy, starts to run, but the second guy leans down, he starts putting on his sneakers, putting on his shoes. And the first guy turns back and looks at him and says, what are you doing? What do you think you're going to outrun the bear? He said, no, all I have to do is outrun you. Right? So gang, in real estate, what you need to do is learn the sneakers to outrun who?
Competition.
Yes, and the competition is who?
Another agent.
Another, how many agents?
4 or 5.
4 or 5 at the most.
Yeah, right.
At the most. In any marketplace, anywhere in the world you decide to work in, it's probably 4 or 5 agents at the most. You're already better than 3 or 4 of them because you showed up on time and you're doing what you say you're going to do. So now you really only narrowed it down to 1 or 2. And the difference between you and them getting the listing, see, some of you blame it on, you know, don't get mad, because I say this with love. Everything I say with love because I care about you guys so much. I want to help you. And here's the deal. Some of you say, well, they're just really aggressive. But you really don't know. You're not there at the kitchen table. You may see them out on the street, and you may see them being aggressive, and you may blame it on that. You may have heard a buyer or seller say, well, that person's really pushy or really aggressive. But sometimes they're not always aggressive. Sometimes they have to put on their stage makeup, right? And they go on stage and they're acting like a different person on that listing presentation. And here's the bottom line, gang, and a lot of us don't want to admit this, and this is going to hurt some of you a little bit when I say this, but you need to hear it, is sometimes they just simply have more skills than you do. And the skills are the dialogues. The skills are knowing what to say, how to say it, when to say it, and how to react to certain objections. I remember Roberta saying, you know, I love that one dialogue you taught us, and everyone who ever went to a Floyd Wickman course knows this, and it's the 2-word dialogue called no problem. She said it changed the way she worked with people, because instead of getting into a combative situation, she was able to say no problem and talk about it, work through it. And she's had at least 2 or 3 sales already that she's told me about that have stemmed from just her handling it with no problem and then moving on. You can do that with a buyer or a seller. So the dialogue doesn't have to be really complex. Sometimes it only needs to be 2 words in 1 sentence, right? So so today I'm gonna teach you some of the most common. I'm gonna share with you the most common objections. They're objections that you already are very familiar with, and I'm going to give you one way of handling each objection. There are 3 of them altogether, and hopefully when you go out of this room, you're going to learn them a little better than they are. What I'd like you to do is turn to the person next to you right now and shake their hand and say goodbye.
Goodbye.
And what I'm asking you to do is, I'm asking you to say goodbye to the old person, the previous person that came into the room, and say hello to the new person, because you're going to come out of this room a new person, right? The old person that you were before is going to stay behind, and the new person is going to walk out of the room, because you're going to learn, truly learn some dialogues.
Will
This
my
is
new person lose some weight?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. Your new person will lose some weight. Your new person.
Get hair, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Actually, you're very much in style, so
Yeah, that's right.
not to worry.
That's
If I
right.
can't lose
mean
weight,
fat?
make my friends gain it.
So with these other brokers, they do some other things other than having dialogues that are good. Okay. The other things that they do is they'll say things like, let's say the house is worth $300,000 or $500,000, and they come in and they say, well, I can list it for $525. Right? Sometimes they give the seller a higher price, and they get the listing. Now, what you need to help the seller understand that agent is doing one of two things. Either they're not doing an accurate market analysis, or they're just guessing. You feel that, gang? If they're trying to beat you on price, if you think you lost a listing because they had it at a higher price, sometimes you want a listing upon, you lose a listing, you look at the multiple listing service and you see that it's listed for a higher price than you recommended, and you say, oh, I lost the listing because it was a higher price. Don't get mad when I say this. Well, maybe, just maybe, you didn't do a good enough job explaining and justifying the price that you had. Maybe you tried to take a shortcut and not buy the $39 DVD, David Knox, Pricing Your Home to Sell, or you did buy it and you didn't play it for them. And that's why you didn't get the listing, and that's why you didn't get the listing price right. You follow me, gang? So, again, it's all about the presentation and helping them understand. Now listen, if the seller truly knew that they were going to net, feel this, they were gonna net less money in their pocket by listing it at a higher price, would they do it?
No.
No. But somebody has to share with them why they should be in a realistic price range. And that really falls upon the person who has the most skill that goes in there. And skill, quite simply, is knowing the dialogues, knowing the words to say, when to say it, and how to say it. Okay? Sometimes the other broker, and you know who the other broker is, don't you? You know who the other broker is? The other broker, I mean, when I say the other broker, you have some pictures of some people in your mind right now, right? And sometimes they say, I'll take it at a lesser commission. Oh, I know they charge 6 bananas over there, but I'm gonna do it for less. But if the seller knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that they were gonna net less money in their pocket by offering out less money at a commission, would they list at a lower commission? No. See, it's up to us to show them, not just tell them, but to show them. Now, I'm gonna practice what I preach today, and for every example that I give you, I'm going to have a visual. And that's what you need to have as well. You know, most of the people you talk to are very visual, okay? Most people that you present to are very visual. So when you have the dialogue, I'm here to tell you, gang, it's not good enough. In other words, your competition, your 4 or 5 other agents out there, narrow it down to 1 or 2 other agents that you're really competing with on a listing presentation, they're going in there and they may have the words. But if you have the words and the pictures, you beat them. You follow me? Because the words you may be only selling to the husband or to the wife. But if you have the words and the pictures, you got them both. Okay? Right? I'm going to provide you with the pictures today. Will that be great? Yeah, all right. So, there are 2 things that you need to know in order to be effective. One of them is you need to know the stats. You need to know the stats. And number 2, you need to know the market. Okay, gang? It's not on the sheet. You can write that down if you'd like. You need to know the stats and you need to know the market in order to effectively handle the objections that you're going to get out there. Now, if you would be so kind. Now, if you noticed, we didn't do what to the packet today? We didn't staple it on purpose, okay? Because what I want you to do is I'd like you to take the handling common listing objections, and if you would be so kind, please, is to put it to the back. And the reason why I'm asking you to do that is that I don't want all these pages to get all mixed up because there's a process that I want to go through today, and it's very well thought out and very detailed. So, please come back, Becky, we're going to talk about you now. Oh, not now, hold on. Take your time. We're going to talk about you in a little bit. Okay, now what I'd like you to do, if you would please, is just pay attention to the next 2 pages. Your next 2 pages should look exactly like these. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, now, what I've done on the first page is they say to you, we want to interview other agents, or we're going to interview other agents, okay? And you might start it off with that famous 2-word phrase, which is what?
No
problem.
No problem.
Good idea, right? So, I'm going to walk through this real quick, and then I'm going to ask you to take a second to just read it to each other real fast. But when you're reading it to each other, I want you to use the what? The visual. Okay? Very, very important. So in other words, it's not good enough to say. You need to show them something. A picture's worth 1,000 what?
Words.
What?
Dollars.
A picture's worth $1,000. Very good. Yes. No problem. I love competition. Out of curiosity, Ken, who do you plan on talking with? Oh, XYZ and BS Realty. It stands for Bob Smith Realty. Just so you know, what is it that you're looking to compare? Just so I know, what is it that you're looking to compare? That's a fantastic question. Like what Mart said earlier, right? Questions, right? Asking the right questions. That's extremely important to know. Well, we're comparing, you know, the color of your sign. Oh, okay, well, let me tell you all the reasons why we use this color, you know. Whatever it is, you never know what they're going to say. So you're going to hire the company that just does the best job for you, am I right? Let me ask you this, God bless you. Let me ask you this, but please think before you answer. If I could prove to you right now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you could talk to 100 other companies and never find one that could do more for you than me and my company, would you list with me today? And sometimes they get off track and they start talking about something else. And then here's how you get back on track. You say, well listen, if I could, would you? Remember those words, if I could, would you? But if I could, would you? Because sometimes you have to get them back on track because they might wiggle a little bit when they hear you starting to comfortably and confidently start using your dialogue, because they start wiggling, okay? Because they feel like, okay, this is turning around now. I took the liberty of doing some shopping for you. And then show the flow chart. So when you get to this point, when you're reading it to the person next to you, what should you do? So when you get to that point, I'd like you to do is, I mean, sometimes some of you might think this is a little corny, but it's a good exercise. Trust me, this is very powerful. So then you take it out and you show the person next to you your flow chart. So the person that's being read to, make sure, if they don't do that, just ask them to say, what do you mean? Show me the flow chart, okay? Here is a list of the top 4 companies and a list of all the services, any one of which might put an extra $1 in your pocket, any one of which might make the difference of selling or not selling your house. I even took the step further and I counted them. For example, and then go to your flow chart and say, for example, my company has how many checks?
31.
31. On Track Realty has how many?
26.
And BS Realty, you said you were interviewing them, they're not even in the top 4, unfortunately, right? They didn't make the top 4. So you could do this one time and just do it. Gang, I'm gonna say this with love. This is gonna take you probably 2 or 3 weeks to put this together, some of you, okay? This is absolutely, positively the most important tool you could ever spend your time on putting together in your career in real estate.
Can't we just
How
use
does
this?
she? No, how do you know what companies, what they offer?
You could call them and ask them. And here's another thing, let's say that you find out that you don't have the most amount of checks, what should you do?
Cancel those out.
Get a new list. Right? Add some in. Like, are all of you using brochure boxes? Like,
No.
even what's on here, do all companies offer home rewards? I found out recently that probably 75% of the people in our company don't know what home rewards is, and 95% of them don't know how to use it. Wow, that is a huge, awesome selling feature that you can go out with, and it's just fantastic. And Sophie, before you leave, I have a video on home rewards, and you can use it for the agents in your office. We had a presentation here, and PowerPoint and all that good stuff, and a handout and everything, so I'll give that to you before you leave, so you folks in Chicopee and Wilbraham, if there's someone here from Wilbraham, I can give it to you guys as well, so you have it. So I mean, that should be on here. Now let me ask you a question. Let's say another company has 30 and you have 31.
Take them off.
Get another sheet.
Right, or, yeah, I mean, I'm
Or delete the
exaggerating,
company.
the bottom line is that that won't happen, I mean, you'll clearly have more checks than another company will, but if you did, and let's say that it was, because of, you're a part of a national relocation group, and I would say to the seller, what if your home was meant to sell through a national relocation group and you're listed with a company that didn't have it? Your home might not sell. Why would you leave any stone unturned? Why would you leave any option out there for your home not to sell when you could clearly list with the best company who's offering the best service? Remember, we confirmed that with them, we asked them the question, so you're gonna list with the company that's gonna offer the most amount of services, right? To get the home sold. The reason I show you this is that if you could fly first class or coach for the same price, which would you choose? Now, why would you choose first class? Well, because it's an easier journey and you get more for the money. Would you agree with that? Isn't it the same when choosing a real estate company? When you hire us, you'll have an easier journey and you'll get more for your money, right? And then you simply say any what?
Question.
The best two-word close in the history of real estate is any questions. And then you simply turn to them how?
With a pen.
Naturally,
And
right?
shaking your head.
Naturally, with a pen, right? All you need to do is approve this form and we'll get the sign in the yard in a couple of days, and then what do? Who was here last week?
They're packing up.
You start
Start
packing
packing
up.
up.
You start packing up as everything was normal. So you just simply hand them the pen and say, all you need to do, Audrey, is put your name on this form right here, and we'll get the sign in the yard in a couple of days.
John,
Just start putting things in places. Yes?
John,
1 second.
I think this flow chart is, you know, it's really great, okay? Why can't you give us, we know who the competition is, I mean, over in Chicopee.
Sure.
We know, it's, and I think not only Chicopee, it's probably the same in Wilbraham and Long Meadow. But why can't you show us the Caldwell Bank and the Park or Century 21
Yep.
or our competition, and give us this sheet?
Sure. The reason I can't do it for every office, I mean, we clearly have, in Long Meadow, have different competitors than they have in Wilbraham and Chicopee, so, but I can certainly help you, put your side together, and then there may be other companies that you would add in that, you know, I need your help, actually, to be honest with you, yes, so.
Actually, I tried putting this together and always got kind of off the job because it was difficult. You've got individual agents out there
Yes.
who pay for their own marketing.
Exactly.
And they offer above and beyond what the company offers.
Right.
So, I had a list, well, that's not right because so-and-so had this, that, and the other thing.
So I would ask all of you agents in this room right now, hold on to the thought, shouldn't you be that agent? Shouldn't you be that agent? Shouldn't you be doing more things than other companies are doing so that this list is bigger, right? So, let's say that, you know, not all companies are putting in brochure boxes, not all agents are using brochure boxes, but you are. What about the for sale hotline numbers, or, you know, making a web page for all of your listings? These are things above and beyond that you can do for your own listings, above and beyond what the company is doing. But even if you just went with the basics, you'll have a much bigger list. Yes, Bill?
Well, first of all, in response to that, because I have been playing around with that for a little bit, and you're right, it's very difficult to try and match it up. So what I started to do is use the things that everybody does. Everybody advertises in local print media, so we put the check in all the boxes. You know, everybody has a presence on the internet and whatever, the check, and then start to do the things that are trademark specific to this company. Premier Service, Home Rewards, that I can say safely none of the others have, because it's trademarked for this company, and they can't offer it. They can offer something similar, but it's my chart, and I can make it up to say anything I want, as long as it's true.
I think that we don't really need to make a comprehensive list on what the competition does. As long as ours is everything that we're gonna do, you just put a few check marks to the other company, put their names up there and just put a few check marks for what everybody does.
Right.
And we're gonna have 40 of these things, and they're gonna have 5. And they're gonna say something like, well, that's all that they do? I says, well, you're gonna talk to them maybe? Check them off as you talk to them,
Right?
you know?
Yeah.
Give them some homework to do. They're not gonna do that.
Right.
But you have a visual in front of them with 40 things, and your competition with 5 or 6.
Right, and that's great, thank you both for mentioning those comments, and John, thank you for that question, it was a good one. And I can help develop this, not a problem, and I can email it out to all of you. You're going to have to customize it to yourself though as well. So, yes.
John, don't you think, and I mean, I'm not going statistically, but don't you think that a lot of the listing presentations that are successful are based on trust? Because it's a very emotional decision to decide to sell your home.
Yes.
Especially to some of these people that have been there for a while, or maybe built it to their own specifications.
Yes.
So a lot of the listings that are successful are because the people like the agent. That's
Right.
Yes.
It's the trust.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's who you feel the most
I mean, all this
Now-
other stuff is good to know, and it's,
Yes.
and there are times when you do have to
Yep.
push, but it's the connection that you make with,
Yes.
that they know that you're going to be honest, that you're going to listen to how they feel.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. So that's another component of, like, when we talk about the listing presentation process, when we talk about building rapport. That's the building rapport component. But let's say that you're good at building rapport, and someone else is equally as good at building rapport, who's gonna get the listing?
Who they feel most comfortable with.
You know, who offers the most services?
If they
Well, I
feel
think
the
it's a
same as you and the
catch-22.
other person, exactly the same, trust-wise, then it's whoever has the
Most
better.
services.
Who has the most tools, who has the best dialogue? So that's a great point, you have to have both, gang, but you know what?
That's gonna win out.
This is gonna be, I
Absolutely,
mean,
they
and I'll
can.
tell you something else,
Then yeah.
when I was new as an agent, I had a lot of these things in place and I had a great marketing plan and all that good stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I was not really good at building rapport. I was 24 years old, I didn't know much about anything. I mean, they would walk in, they'd have golf trophies, and I knew I was supposed to talk about golf. I'd never golfed in my life, and I was like, you know, they'd have dogs or kids. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I had a really, really difficult time building rapport. But my second year in the business, I sold 24 houses, right? But because I had this stuff, and I can guarantee you I didn't have the rapport. As I became older and I became more worldly, right? And I was able to feel more comfortable developing rapport with people, then I could do that.
You have more practice.
And I had more practice doing it.
That's the
I
whole
mean,
thing I find is the practice.
yeah,
So just,
I mean, some people are natural. I mean, my daughter from, my goodness, you know, from the time she could talk, she was a natural rapport builder. I remember walking through the mall with her and girls twice her height coming over to her and saying, "Oh, hi Chantel," and giving her a big hug. And I thought, how does she do that? I mean, wow, if I could do that in real estate, that would be amazing. If I could walk into a room and say, "Oh, hi John," and you know, or you know, give me a great big handshake. How does she do that? But she was just a natural rapport builder. I had to learn it, and even now I still sometimes wonder if I'm there, you know. So anyway, so that's something that's a great point, but you need the tools too. Some people go in with a clipboard and a legal pad and a great personality, and they get the listing. But I can tell you, the day for that agent is over. It's done. Okay? Right? Because that agent will start losing listings to those of you who are coming to these training classes. And they'll say, what the heck? Andre hasn't even been in the business for a year yet? Who is this guy? How did he get the listing from me? Well, he knew what to say, when to say it, how to say it, and he had the tools and the visuals to overcome even the most aggressive, quote unquote aggressive, and productive agents out there that have been productive for years, okay? Every now and then, somebody actually listens to everything I say and they do it. Every now and then that happens. And one gentleman, his name was Brad, he did this back in 1997, and he was voted Worcester County in Realtor of the Year. He was 22 years old at the time, and he had a face that looked like he was 16 years old. And he just knocked the cover off the ball because he just didn't ask any questions, he didn't question it, he just said okay, and he did it, and it worked, you know? He was very coachable, right? And it worked. Let's go to the, so what I'd like you to do is stay on this page right here on the front. Pick a partner, someone sitting next to you preferably, that way it will be easier to talk to them. And what I'd like you, now, if you don't have a partner, raise your hand. Does everyone have a partner?
The boss doesn't have a partner.
You, three of us?
How about Paula and Christine?
wait a minute.
Paula
Gotta
and
be the middle
Christine.
one.
oh, all right.
And then that one, and then
Everybody in the middle.
Sophie and Linda maybe?
Well, she's extra too.
Was that?
Yeah, doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
we're like
I
three.
know, I know, but if you have a choice here, here, take here.
Oh, yeah.
Those two, I can go with you.
Okay, here's, all right, here are the teams, you ready? I'm gonna make this easy, ready? 2, 2, 2,
Okay.
2, 2, 2, right? 2, you two, and then Paula, you and Sandy, and Jameson, you're out. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna role play with Jameson, okay? Now, if you're watching this DVD, what I'd like you to do is read this dialogue twice out loud. Now, how do we role play, gang?
Quickly.
Very fast. I want you to read this dialogue as quickly and as fast as you can. I don't want you to wait for the other person to respond. Now, the person that's listening, how do you listen? You don't say a word, just go like this a lot, okay? Don't ask questions, don't try to throw them off track. You roll, I call this positive role play, okay? And what are we gonna use when we get to certain points?
Visual.
The visuals, okay? On your mark, get set, go, really fast.
No problem.
Okay, time's up. All right, if you can hear my voice, say. I had to do this 3 times for it to work. You guys are great. A lot of energy in this one. That's awesome. Now let's go to number 2. Number 2, sometimes the agents say, well, they'll take it for 1% less. You know, I talked to ABC Realty, and I really like what you have to say, Becky, but you know what? The other person said they would take it for less money. Well, let me ask you this, but please think before you answer. If you knew you could net more money, would you pay me more money? If you knew you could net more money, would you pay me more money? And they say, whoa, and you say, if I could, would you? If I could, would you? Everybody say that with me. Ready, go.
If I could, would you?
Because sometimes they're gonna try to get you off track when you ask an obvious question that gets them to say yes. They're gonna try to, so you're just gonna look at them and say, but if I could, would you? Right? I'm gonna show you something that will prevent you from making a mistake. And on the surface, it seems like a lower commission might make sense. But here are the MLS statistics. Now go to your next pages. The next page, gang, is the MLS statistics. I ran these off last night at 10:55 PM. And these are the multiple listing statistics for all the towns in Massachusetts. Now, what I want you to do is look up here for a second, if you would, please. Go to the bottom, go to the second to last column. It says SPLP. What does that stand for?
List
List
price,
price,
sales price.
list price.
Sale price to sale price ratio. If you look at the very bottom, total properties, what number do you see there?
96.
96. That's 96%. Means if you sold a house for $100,000, you would get $96,000 for the property on average in the multiple listing service. And then, look at the next page. I went into the multiple listing service and I looked up Becky Bonfilia. And look at the same column and look at the number on the bottom. What does it say?
98.
98. So
Thank
Becky,
you.
you're the only one that
Got
can
a
keep
tool.
these pages, right? You have a self-made tool, but good for you for doing this. Now, what if I checked out a few of you and you had 95, 94, not good. But, so what you have to do is you have to change the numbers. You have to say, all right, then try your office. And if it's not your office, try the top 5 agents in your office. Or try the top 10 agents in your company. Or try the top 5 offices in your company. Keep messing around with the numbers until you get a bigger number, and be honest with them, and tell them where the numbers came from. So what I would say to them is that, listen, when you list with me, you're listing with my whole office. We're all going to work to sell. And the top 5 agents in my office happen to have an average of 98, right? I mean, tell them the truth. Tell them where the statistics come from, all right? And then present it and show them the visual. See now, some of you might be able to say that, but gang, look at this. I mean, imagine pulling this out and then circling the 96 and circling the 98 and having the visual right there in front of their face on the table, right? So now listen to the rest of this dialogue. It's so awesome. You see, my own company statistics are, or if they're yourself personally, or if it's the top 5 agents in your office, whatever it is 98%. The average multiple listing company only gets 96%. What I'm really saying is that by paying me 1% more, we can get you an average of 2% more for your house by negotiating. You end up with an extra 1% in your pocket, and that is what we are really talking about, isn't it? Right? Are you guys following me on this? Right? Okay, good. Any questions? All you need to simply do now is, approve this form, and we'll get the sign in the yard in a couple of days. Now, when I was an agent, I used to get 7 all the time, 7, 7, 7. And I had statistics that would prove my average list to sale ratio was 98.5%. Now, how did I have such a higher list ratio in a market? 98.5, that's pretty good. How did I get that?
You priced accurately.
I priced accurately, or I what?
Marketed well.
I didn't take the listing. I didn't take the listing. What did everybody else do in MLS? They took the listing and they sat on the market. They either didn't do an accurate CMA or they didn't know what they were doing, right? And they left it on the market too long. And what happened to the average? Back in 1995, 1996, the average list to sale price ratio in the Worcester County Board of Realtors, at Worcester County Multiple Listing Service, was 94%. Mine was 98.5%. So I could legitimately say to a seller, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, by paying me 2% more, on average, I'm getting 4.5%. That's a half. 4.5% more for my sellers by marketing their properties. And they would say, kind of a no-brainer. And the 7 was already pre-typed in the form and everything and ready to go. And then I would say, any questions? Gang, there were no questions. So when people said, how did you get it? How do you get it? Especially in that market, right? How many have heard of the Spags mentality? You ever heard that term before? You know where that came from? Worcester County. What does that mean? When you get, bring your own bags.
Bring your own bag, yeah.
Bring your bags to Spags. What else does it mean? Discount, right? Discount.
Yeah.
Oh, everyone's discounting. So supposedly I'm working in a marketplace that has a mentality of everyone who lives in that marketplace has this discount mentality, right? I have competitors doing it for 4 and 5% and 3% if I sell it myself, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. And I'm getting 7. How and why did I do it? What did I have that they didn't have? I had services, I had
Guts.
guts. You know what, I'll be honest with you, the first time I did this, I didn't have guts. Eventually I've had confidence, but the first time I did it, if you've been to previous sessions, I told you the story about the first time I asked for 7. I was so nervous that it worked for me, my mouth dried out and I couldn't talk, literally couldn't talk. And it was the best thing I ever did, was to shut up, because I wanted to blah, 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 blah. I would have talked myself right out of it. But I literally couldn't talk because I was so nervous, and I slid the form in front of them, and they looked at each other, and they talked, and they signed it, and I was like, and it worked. And I didn't have the tool then either, but I eventually developed the tool and put that together and had that as part of my listing presentation. Did they what?
Did you get what they wanted for the house?
To be honest, I don't remember. That was like, that was over 12 years ago, so I don't remember. So now, so you like this? Is this juicy or what?
Where'd you get this on MLS?
Where did I get this?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what I
you go in the
did.
multiple listing service and you click on the button Market Survey or Market Statistics or something like that.
Market reports.
Under-
Market Reports, thank you, Sophie.
Under tools?
Under
Market
Tools,
reports.
Tools,
You
Market
gotta go to
Reports.
Tools.
Thank you, Sophie. And what I did is, you can see the criteria that I entered in the top: single family, condo, multifamily, land, and maybe you have to mess around with that to make your numbers work, right? Maybe you just have to do single family. Maybe if they have a condo, gang, feel this, maybe if they have a condo, you only use condos to make your numbers work. Just keep fiddling around with the numbers until the numbers work. And they're honest, and they're sincere, and they're accurate, and they're coming right out of MLS, okay? And now you have a visual to show them. I put in all of Massachusetts. You might do Wilbraham to Wilbraham. You might do Chicopee to Chicopee. You might do Longmeadow to Chicopee, Longmeadow to Wilbraham. You know, move it around, make it work, okay?
Yeah.
And you know, tell them what you're doing. Now, what I did here, gang, the only thing I did was, I had Becky's list agent number in here. I typed in her name. Okay, so you would type in your name if it's your name, or type in your office if it's your office. And what I did is I just copied it and I pasted it on the sheet, and that's it. It was that simple. Very easy to do. Okay, so now, if you're watching this as on a DVD, I want you to read this dialogue twice out loud. And for you folks, I'd like you to turn to your partner and please read. Roberta and Jameson are partners, and what I'd like you to do is go ahead and read your dialogue as fast as you can. The dialogue is ready, Okay, at this point, you should be switching partners pretty soon. Go ahead and hand in the pen.
to sell it.
Now we're not buying
See,
anything.
my company is 56 or 19. And then this company is 96.
How would you like someone to, I would rather see it church out there.
You make up the extra 1% of your profit.
Alan wants 1.3 years. Yeah, and I got another guy who wanted to rent.
I don't think that works.
Yeah, well,
Okay, we're all set. Now, here's what's happening right now, gang. If I can have your attention for just a moment, please. And, so, I'm giving you some homework. This is truly a workshop, right? It's not a lecture, it's not a seminar, okay? You're gonna leave here today with these skills because you've heard me read it to you once and explain it to you. You've heard your partner read it to you, and you've actually said it. So the more senses you get involved in this, the more you're gonna remember. Some of you will leave, have to use this weekend. Even if you screw it up really bad, but you get the gist of it, okay? If you just get the gist of it, it'll work for you, okay? It'll be better than saying, okay, well, maybe you wanna think it over, you know, and then you leave. Because that's what, if you didn't have the tool or something to say, that's what you might say. What else could you say? You don't have anything to say, right? Now, here's another thing. Changing the subject doesn't work because you're still leaving them with the unanswered question, right? I'm also sending you out of here. You're gonna have to do some what? In order to prepare your presentation, what are you gonna need?
Research.
You're gonna do some research, you're gonna have to do some work, you're gonna have to do some homework, you're gonna have to make the numbers work. Some of you are brand new in real estate, you haven't sold anything yet. So you're gonna have to use your company's data, you're gonna have to use your office's data, you might have to use the top 5 agents in your office data, okay? But make the numbers work. I'm telling you, Dan, you go out there armed with this ammunition, and this data is extremely powerful. Extremely powerful, okay? Yeah, Phil, you had a question? Or a comment?
Yeah, the try a higher price thing, if you use that David Knox video,
Yes.
that's addressed right in there, right?
Absolutely it is.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely it is.
And these dialogues, these aren't part of our listing kit, these are after the listing presentation, if they
Yes.
have, or during.
Exactly. Remember in your listing kits, those of you who have worked one-on-one with me, in the back of your listing kit, the last tab says what? It's AI, additional information,
Oh, yeah.
right? And you have things in there like what you should do to prepare for an open house and so on and so forth. This is where you should keep your stats in the back, in case you need them. Only pull them out and show them if you need them. So if I were Becky, what I would do is I would have these 2 pages under additional information. So when they said, I don't wanna pay you 7 bananas because someone else said they would do it for 5 or 4 bananas, and then, you know, Becky would say, oh, no problem, and she'd go to the back of her listing presentation book, pull these 2 sheets out, unclip her presentation and lay them out flat on the table and show this. I'm not suggesting you do this, but I have a funny story to tell you. There's a gentleman that, his name is Jim, is a really good friend of mine. I still keep in touch with him today. In fact, he and I and his wife actually became really good friends with her as well. And we're going out next Saturday night to watch an Elvis Presley impersonator. Everyone say, ooh, right? But it's for a good cause anyway. It's for a police department. They're raising money for the police department. We're going out this Saturday night. But both Jim and Kathy are real estate agents. And Jim, years ago, was learning about what to put in his listing presentation kit. And he took quite literally when they said, what should you bring with you on a listing presentation? What should you bring with you? Everything, right? And he did. And honest to goodness, gang, I've not seen one since, but he had literally the thickest 3-ring binder I've ever seen in my life. It must have been custom ordered. I've never seen one that big since. It literally probably was about 4 inches tall. And he literally put this in a backpack because he couldn't carry it. He put the backpack on his shoulder, and he would walk into the listing presentation, and he'd take it off, and he'd put it on the chair, and he'd give his presentation. And most of the time, people would look at him and say, are you gonna go through every page of that? And he said, listen, this is what he would say to them, and it was beautiful. And by the way, he never had to go through every page ever, because this was his dialogue. He said, for every single objection you could possibly come up with for not listing with me and my company, I have it here in this book, and I will show you every page if I have to.
Stop.
Right? And they would say, where do we sign? They're like, we have to be in bed by at least 12, you know?
That's great.
And so, you know what, gang? Maybe there's something to be learned from that, you know? Maybe you could try it yourself. It'll be fun. Come back to training with a little bit of a story.
And if you really look at it, they're all blank pages.
Yeah.
No, but what he did, he literally had a visual for every answer, for every objection you could possibly come up with. He had a piece of paper. Like, for instance, we talked about, a couple weeks ago, we talked about how do you get a full-term listing for a full 6 months or 9 months or however long you need it. And we use the across the desert analogy, right? If you had to cross the desert and you knew it took 180 gallons of gas, you wouldn't take 90, would you? What would happen to you if you only took 90 gallons of gas? You might even take more than 180, right? So what I need, Mr. and Mrs. Sellers, I need the fuel to get your property sold, right? I need 180 days to get it sold. And so what he did is he literally had a picture of a desert. That's it, just a photograph of a desert. And when he was using that dialogue, he would show them a picture of the desert and say, if you would, and again, you know, it was just a visual. It helped him to remember. He had them all labeled on the ends, you know, for different objections and that people might have, and he'd have it right out there on the table. And you know what else I appreciate too, and that I like a lot, and I'll be honest with you, I don't remember if Jim did this or not, but I would highly respect anyone who would do this. But listen, gang, if you don't know or internalize or know these dialogues well enough, I mean, gang, you have two options. You can give the listing to your competitor, or you can give them an answer to a question. When you're there, you have two answers. You can either have it memorized and know what to say, when to say, and how to say it right then and there, or you're gonna lose the listing. Going back to the two options, or you could have this in the back of your listing presentation and literally read it verbatim and then say to them, Mr. and Mrs. Orenstein, you know, I went to a class recently. It was an advanced real estate training class that our company put on, and it answered the question that you have about trying it at a higher price. So if you don't mind, I'm just gonna read this to you and to let you know what we're supposed to say to you as professionally trained real estate agents. This is what a good agent is supposed to say to you when you say we wanna try it at a higher price. And read it to them. There's nothing wrong with that. Think of the alternative. The alternative is, well, okay, you probably wanna think it over. Or, okay, well, I'll take the listing, and then I'll disappoint you in 6 months when it doesn't sell, and you'll hate me, right? Everyone will drive by my sign for 6 months with my name rider on it, and then see another company's sign go in with a sold sign, right? These are the alternatives, right? Hey, listen, gang, I'm using the same things on you that I'm asking you to use it on yourselves, and that is the fear of loss, right? I'm bringing up all these analogies of all the things you're gonna lose if you don't do it, right? And that's what the same thing you have to explain, the things that you need to explain and use with a seller. Try at a higher price. Oh boy, the best kept secret in the state. I'm like, what do you mean, right? When you say that. Let me understand what you're saying. Are you saying that you would take the $450,000, but you want to ask $475,000 just in case a buyer makes a lower offer? And they'll say yes. I understand the reasoning. We used to do it that way. Are you familiar with what I call the expired list? Now, I'm gonna stop here for a second, gang, and this is what I'm going to do. And again, I'm giving you more homework, but the next 5 pages, gang, right, is an expired list. I have 5 pages of one-line expires in your packet.
Yeah.
And here's how I got these 5 pages. For the sake of putting a seminar together, I wanted to give you a small example, okay? Now, here's what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you a third piece of homework. You ready? Because you're going to be able to use this tool a lot. I only chose 3 towns expired, and I only chose 6 months. What if you did all the towns, and you did 12 months? How many pages do you think you'd have for Western Mass, gang? A lot. And then what I would ask you to do is I'd ask you to tape them end to end like this, and then fold them like an accordion, like that. and then when you meet with the seller, you show, are you familiar with the expired list? Let me show you. And they go, and you just roll them right out onto the floor, right? And have them all, and have this huge, massive list, all one after the other. What a visual, huh? What an impression that would make. Some of you think I've lost my mind, but let me tell you something. It works, okay?
Shouldn't you put in a price range to,
No, why?
well, to be.
No, I'm
in
gonna
their
tell you why,
price
I'll tell you why in a second, I'll tell you why in a second. Because of the point that I'm going to make, you're not gonna wanna put a price range in. Because, these people they all have, regardless of the price range, they all have two things in common, and I'm gonna explain that to them in a minute. But are you familiar with the expired list? And again, if you want somebody to do something, people will do anything to avoid being on a bad list.
Right.
Right? They will do anything to avoid the fear of loss. They don't want to be on the expired list, okay? Now, so I show them the expired list. And let me tell you something, the longer your list, the more work you put into that expired list, the more dramatic it is, the more powerful your presentation, your objection handling technique will be, okay? They all have two things in common. One, they couldn't sell. Two, they did what you're thinking right now. Let's pad it, we can always come down in case the buyer makes an offer. That is what you're thinking, correct? You may know you'll take less, and I may know you'll take less, but according to the law of this state, I am not allowed to tell another human being. Let me ask you a question, and please think before you answer. If you knew the best you could get was $450,000, and you knew you could get it, would you take it? And they'll go blah, 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 and you have to go, if you knew, would you, right? You have to get them back on track. If you knew, would you? Okay, then let's do this. So you don't lose that new house or that new condo you put under agreement, so you don't lose that property you wanna buy, or so that you can move and be together with your family again, right? Let's put it on the market for $450 and be firm on the price. I'd rather see you turn down 10 offers in a row than never get one looker because the law says I'm not allowed to tell them what you're thinking. And just look at them with the puppy dog look that we talked about as a go. Any questions? No? Okay, all you need to do now is simply approve this form and we'll get the sign of the yard in a couple of days. Hand him the pen and then what? Start packing up. Start packing up, okay? Okay, yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, yeah.
On that expired list, I would like to add extended also because.
The longer the list, the better it is.
That's what I mean.
Go for it.
And plus, a lot of people just extend and it shows how many days.
Yes, yep, absolutely.
Expired and extended.
Yep, absolutely. So I think it's a great idea. The longer and more impressive the list, the better it is.
Yeah.
Yes, Bill?
I did, when I was putting that listing kit together, and I think I showed you the example, I did something similar on this try a higher price objection. But instead of being expired, I pulled up a property that originally listed at $199 and sold for $75, and all the price reductions all along. And it's, you know, well, here's what it listed. Had they listed it at $175, they probably would have sold it at that price and got $175, and now it's here at $75,000.
So you had an example, a real life example of somebody chasing down the market.
Yeah.
They overpriced, and as they adjust, the market went down a little bit. They adjust again, the market went down a little bit, chasing down the market. That's a great example. That's great. Okay, so ready, 1, 2, 3, go.
We gotta read them.
Okay, sounds like most of you are done. Why don't we, if you would for a moment, please go to the last page.
I like this one, because I actually said that. I would just say that. And I don't know the different things. I've said that.
I'm seeing some.
They have to stand.
Okay, here we go. The next page is, let's start on your comparison flow chart. Real quick, we're gonna go through, and we're gonna use what we call the fishbone method of interaction. The fishbone method means that each of you will have an opportunity to what I'd like for each of you to do is volunteer one. So every person needs to volunteer one thing, okay? And if you have someone sitting next to you that hasn't volunteered something and you have two things you want to volunteer, maybe you give them a little elbow and say, hey, how about this one, okay? So in fishboning, every person has one good idea, and normally at the end of a fishboning interaction session, you would vote on the top three. But we're not gonna do that today. We're just gonna ask you to use whichever ones that you see fit and make a note of those. And I've included a comparison flow chart here for you, so you can make a list of those activities on the top. You can write your competitor's name on the top. I'm sorry, you should list your activities on the left-hand side. And but before we get into that, go to the last page. I'm gonna talk about what's gonna happen next week. Next week, we're going to talk about what?
Sale by owner.
Listing for sale by owner. Okay? What are you going to eat for breakfast after next week? Fizbos, absolutely. You're gonna eat them for breakfast, right? Some people say Fizbos are vicious and they're mean, they eat their young, but you're gonna eat them for breakfast, how's that? You're gonna learn two important keys that you need to know in finding the for sale by owners, and then I'm gonna give you 3 ingredients that you're absolutely positively going to need for a really, really effective for sale by owner presentation, okay? As a bonus, I'm literally going to give you a presentation. You will have a presentation that you can physically use that will give the sellers 3 facts and 6 very obvious reasons why they will never want to go for sale by owner and why they should hire you, okay? Some of the facts are, you know, real estate agents have been in real estate for over 100 years. Real estate agents get more money for the property than for sale by owners do, right? Yes?
Art did a study a couple of weeks ago, and that's absolutely true. Art, I think it was 14% more
Yeah, over 14% more in Chicopee.
Great,
Sold
yeah.
by real
than
estate.
for sale by owner.
That's great, that's a great
Yeah.
statistic, that's awesome, thank you for sharing that, that's great. And so, and literally what you're going to be able to do is you're gonna take this, it's probably about an 8 or a 9 page presentation. And what you're going to do is you're gonna add this 8 or 9 pages to the back of your listing presentation kit under additional information for when they say to you, Roberta, you know what, that was a great presentation, we really wanna think it over, and Roberta would say, well, what is it exactly that you wanna think over? And they say, well, actually, we were seriously considering selling it ourselves. So, oh, that's no problem. Let me share with you 3 facts and 6 obvious reasons about listing for sale by owner. And then she flips her book over to that section, and she goes through the visuals and convinces them as to why they would never want to do this in a million years, and how they're going to net more money in their pocket. They're going to sell it quicker and in less time. And I'm telling you, when you're done, this presentation is so powerful. Floyd Wickman actually is the creator of this presentation, and he's an absolute genius, because this presentation, as short as it is, brings them through the entire psychological process of selling them on not being a for sale by owner. It's very, very powerful. Okay? So please make sure you're here for that. And I'm gonna put a little challenge out for each of you. Next week when you come here, bring a friend. Okay? Hey, even if they're with another company, bring them along, right? I mean, well, hey, because they need to learn too, right?
Or it has to be a realtor.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a realtor, you know?
Could be somebody thinking of listing their house on their own.
Absolutely, yeah, bring a for sale by owner with it. How about that?
Yeah.
Everybody bring a FSBO with you.
Oh, yeah, and you people are all gonna jump on my.
Call the for sale by owners and say, listen, we're having a seminar just for you. You need to come to this. I've got your address right here. I'll pick you up at 9:30. We've got to be there for 10. All right, gang? That's your challenge for the week. Okay. Yeah, we'll give them coffee, donuts, and we'll show them all the reasons why. Okay, comparison flow chart. All right, who wants to start? I'm not going to go in a row. I'll just randomly take your request. Remember, each person is responsible for one thing. Right up here, gang, if I could have your attention for a second. Each person comes up with a one thing that you can add as a service to your comparison flow chart. Like MLS, lockbox, right? So try to be as creative as possible, and even the simple things work very well as well. So who wants to start us off? Ken. Oh, sorry.
Let the lady go first.
No.
The young lady go first.
Oh, I shouldn't. You go first then.
Video,
What do you mean by video?
like a Praz video.
Praz Media, so a video, right? Video presentation. And by the way, gang, for everything you have on this list of all the things you're going to do to market the property, which will also be another sheet of paper, which will also be part of your marketing plan. So the things on this list should also be on your marketing plan that you share with them. What should you have for every one of these items?
A visual.
A what?
Visual.
A visual, absolutely. So Ken just wouldn't look at this page and say, oh, we're gonna give you a Praz video. They're like, a what? I think I had one of those the last time I went to see the doctor. Sorry.
That was a visual, we didn't.
And I didn't give you a visual.
What's a Praz?
That was a visual without the visual.
That's the name
one
of
we
the.
had.
Praz is the name of the company that does the
company.
video tours for us, yes.
Oh.
Praz Video. So we know what it is, but they don't know what it is. So Ken would show them. They're gonna be getting out flex sheets for us to add to our presentation. Bill, I sent you an email on that last night, and because Bill asked for it, and I said, you know, it's a great idea, I passed it on to Mark. They're gonna provide us with a flex sheet that you could add to your listing presentation to have that. And
How soon will it be?
Yeah, how soon?
he said that we have within 2 weeks, we'll have it. And in the meantime, you've all been emailed a link that you could demonstrate and show them right there at their house. You could even email that link to the seller before you get to the appointment
Right.
and say, here, open this up. This is one of the many marketing tools that we use to market your home.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And say, I need you to check this out before I come over tonight.
But make sure
And
you
email them
open
the
the
link.
links, because a couple of them are these like mansions on the water. You wanna use one that they'll identify with,
Okay, sure.
because some
Yeah.
of those
Yeah.
are really
Yeah.
off the wall.
Okay. Yep. It might impress them. They say, wow, you know, you're gonna do the same for me as you did for a mansion? That's pretty
Okay,
cool.
that's
Maybe.
good.
I don't know. It depends on the person listening. Yes, Barbara?
On my upper end, if I was going out like I am tomorrow, I always tell them that I have a broker's open house with a fabulous lunch, and everybody comes because they know I do great lunches. I do things like that.
So can we add that to here?
You do that on a Saturday at the open house?
No, brokers
Oh, the
open
brokers,
house,
oh,
and I
yeah.
always have a great lunch,
Yeah.
and so I know, like, Caldwell Banker always comes to my broker's.
Well, they always give good lunch too.
What's next? Yes, Audrey,
Just listed postcards
Ah.
with pictures of their home on it.
just listed postcards.
Isn't
And-
that on here?
What could we have as a visual for that?
Pictures of
copy.
their home.
Sample postcard.
Absolutely.
One of our
With their
postcards.
picture.
What's next? We have 17 or 18 people here, so we need 17 or 18 items.
Flyer box,
What is it?
flyer box?
Flyer box, right? I call it a brochure box or a flyer box, absolutely. And what could you use for a visual for that?
The brochure box.
The actual box, bring it right in the house. And what should be in that box? A brochure of what should be in that box?
Their house.
Their house.
Another
Some
house.
of you are saying, wow, John, that's a lot of work. We didn't have to do that before. Well, you know what, gang? The more of this stuff you do, the more you'll impress them, and the more you impress them, the more you're going to get the listing. People, I used to do all these things. I used to put what I call special feature cards, all right? Special feature cards. And they were just real small cards, and it said exclusive feature of this property address, and it would have the address of their property on the card, and then it would have the feature of their property. Hardwood floors, ceiling fans, first floor laundry, garden in rear yard, 3-car garage. And what I would do is I would have these on colored paper, and they would all be different colors. And what I would do is when I got to the listing presentation, I would literally have all these cards, anywhere from 15 to 20 cards, with their address already on it. They're already folded, and I would lay them out all over their table like little soldiers, all over their table. And I'd start handing them to them, and I'd hand them another one, and they'd start putting them on the table, and it was very interactive. And by the time I was done, I had so much stuff on the table that it was burying the other stuff. And so I literally, one time, it only happened once, this one woman said to me, she literally stood up from the table and said, "What are you charged for all this?" And I said, "Only 7. She said, "Thank God, I thought you were gonna say like 10% or something. This is amazing. No one else is doing this." And I said, "I know." Right? Isn't that cool, gang? I mean, and everybody can do what I'm talking about. I wasn't smarter than my competitors, right? Right?
Do you mean those little cards that we used to do before, that you put in front of these things? Let's say in
Yes.
the kitchen on the door, you put washer, dryer, so they can open the door and say, oh, that's where the washer and dryer is,
Mhm.
to get their attention, and we'd have them all over the place.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yes, these are they're cards, they're 10 cards, they fold down. And here's what I used to do to the seller, and sellers really used to like this. They used to think that I was some sort of a marketing genius, little did they know, right? But here's what I used to explain to them. I used to say, first floor laundry. I said, "Mr. and Mrs. Seller, where does this card obviously go?" And they said, "Well, on the washer or the dryer." And I said, "No." And they went, "What do you mean?" I said, "We put this card in the basement on the furnace." And they said, What do you mean?" I said, "Because when the buyer walks down into the basement and they see a feature card that says first floor laundry, it's gonna trigger their memory better. They're gonna look around and say, 'Hey, honey, we don't have to walk down these stairs to do the laundry.' Because if you put it on something that's obvious, they'll tend to ignore it. It'll almost be invisible because it's too obvious. But if you put it in a weird, wacky place and it's on fluorescent paper, they're gonna see it, it's gonna jump out at them. They're gonna actually start going around the house looking for these little cards, right? Kind of like when you go into a museum, you see little cards next to the pictures and all that good stuff. I mean, what if you saw a card that said, and it said something different? You'd remember it more, right? And so it's a little technique. And so visual for these actually have the cards. Okay, what else?
Internet marketing on multiple sites would enhance listing.
Internet marketing, multiple sites. What could you use for visuals for that?
Craigslist.
Realtor.com.
Bring your laptop.
Well, you could bring your laptop, right? You could have pictures of the front page printed out and show them the pictures of the front page of each of the website, right? What else? What else can you use? Come on, gang, you wanna beat the competition. What else can we use?
Premier service.
Premier service, absolutely, right? Premier Service, and explain that to them. What visual do you use for Premier Service?
The brochure.
Survey,
Right, the picture of you, that's good.
survey.
Surveys.
The survey, oh, well, that's an additional one. Surveys, and it also shows the Premier Service, but I'm thinking about the Premier Service pledge. That's in every buyer and seller kit, right? The fold out that opens up and it's the pledge, okay? What else?
Home
Warranties.
Home services.
Yep,
Home
Warranty,
services,
mortgage,
right?
insurance.
yep, the one stuff.
Home services, warranty, absolutely.
Yeah, one-stop shopping.
Yep.
Yep, one-stop shopping, absolutely huge. Yep. What else?
How successful is name recognition, like using General Motors as? Does anybody ever use that? I do, but every now and then I kinda wonder, we're part of one of the largest companies in the world.
Extremely important, so you could add this, GM, right?
Brand.
Might be better if we
Right.
say with Honda.
Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you know, we're part of a nationally, excuse me, hey guys, we're part of an international company, a company that's recognized internationally, you know, versus you wanna list with PS Real Estate Company, right?
Yeah.
And they're not internationally recognized, a buyer's gonna have more confidence, and because we have these additional services going with us and calling on our sign than our competitors. What else?
Relocation.
Relocation.
Yeah.
Some of you haven't volunteered yet, come on, let's go.
Some might not.
Home rewards.
Home rewards,
Really?
Andre's taking the lead.
He said that for me, I'll bet.
I constantly have to work on
Me
those.
too.
Resume.
Guys, listen to this real quick, one second, James. Home rewards, what's the visual you should use for that?
That's what we have before.
You can literally go into home rewards, enter in the customer's name and information, and print out a flyer that is it's called brochure. You click on the word brochure, it has their name on it, and then it has 2 pages in color of all the discounts of all the different products and services that they can get, in addition to any ones that you wanna add in there for people that you wanna add in, okay? And you show them this and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, just so you know, when you list with me, you're gonna have access to discounts on all these items. And you just spread them all out on the table. And they're really good discounts too. This is really great stuff. And they're all things that they're gonna need when they buy or sell their home. Now, you could say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, here's a home reward discount for you, and give it to them right then and there, and they could access it and use it right then and there, right now, before they list with you. Is that a good idea? No.
Oh.
Right? You want, what Judy said a couple weeks ago, you wanna hold a carrot on the stick, right? For them, give them an incentive, another incentive to list with you. Home rewards. Jameson.
Free staging service.
Ah, free staging service. And then maybe you could provide some,
Provide my mentor, Christine, for
you know, free staging services. Maybe what you could do is you could have, a list of all the benefits and statistics about how homes sell quicker and faster with staging services. And Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you list with an agent who doesn't provide that, your home may not sell, right?
Resume.
A resume of yourself, absolutely. Look at your own comparison flow chart that I gave you that was already filled out. And what's the bottom item?
Me.
You got it. You could list with my competitors, but they don't have me. Puppy dog.
The marketing guarantee that you always tell us.
Ah, marketing guarantee. I call it my 30-day marketing guarantee.
That's
That's how you spell guarantee. 30-day marketing guarantee. Now, the dialogue that goes around the 30-day marketing guarantee is I have a list of all my marketing services, will be the same service that are listed on that, but on a separate piece of paper. At the top of the paper it says 30-day marketing plan. And then I have a separate piece of paper that says my 30-day marketing plan guarantee. And I just simply write up on this piece of paper, I use these words. I say, and I put it on like parchment paper and make it look really professional. I would take this out and I would share it with them. I would take this out of my briefcase, not in my listing presentation book, because I wanted it laid out on the table separately. And I'd say, when you list with me, I'm making a promise to do every single one of these items in the first 30 days. Remember what David Knox said about the first 30 days that your home is on the market is when you get the most activity? Well, I want to strike while the iron is hot. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I do need a 6-month listing agreement, as do my competitors. But the difference between them and me is that they think they have 6 months to sell it. And so they're gonna have a marketing services that they do that they don't even do as many things as I do. But when they do, they implement, they'll do an ad here this month, and next month they'll do an open house, and the month after that, they'll have a broker luncheon if that doesn't work, and the month after that, the 5th month, they'll put the video on it. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm gonna do everything within the first 30 days, and if I don't do it, it says right here in my guarantee, you can cancel the contract. Canceling the contract allows you to relist with another agent or go out and sell it for sale by owner or do anything you want. Now,
But if you're gonna do all that in the first month, why do you need 6 months?
because of the length of time that it takes to get a property sold, even if I do all the corrective things, there are reasons why a property doesn't sell. One of them mostly is pricing and promotion. And even if you have the right price, John, and you do the right promotion on a property, it still may need 180 days for that buyer to come in to buy that property. In addition to the buyer coming in, if let's say it takes 4 months typically for a buyer to come in to buy the property, I still need to it's going to be under agreement for another month and a half to 2 months, so I still need the listing for that length of term as well. And so even the successful people that sell their properties and get their homes sold are very powerful. If you would, gang, go back to Becky's 2 sheets real quick, and I want to expand on what a great point that John brought up. Thank you, John. Go back to these 2 sheets right here. Now, how many of you see where it says average days on market?
Yeah.
It's the 3rd column over from the right. Do you see that? What is the average number of days on market for all of MLS?
132.
132. What about Becky? Is that something to brag about, to talk to your sellers? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you need to be moved fast and in a hurry, my average is 91. You list with any other agent, it could take them 132 days to get the property sold. And these are just the properties that sold, not the properties that didn't sell. Okay, then you can go to your expired list and pull up the average property time on the market for a property even in their price range and how long it's on the market and when it expires. But even though my average is getting them under agreement, but look at my averages. I have 24 days, 154 days, 13 days, 109. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I don't know whether you're gonna be the 154 or the 13. I don't know when the buyer is gonna come around, but I can tell you my average is better than anyone else. But it could take, even though you have the best agent in town, it still can take a while to sell. And you might even be able to tell them, even if it's especially because of your price range, and you do an analysis on price range, and you show that their price range is gonna take even longer. So that's how I would
And you
handle that.
could give them the national average of 9 months
Sure,
inventory,
yeah.
something
Or you
like
can
that.
even go in Trend Graphics right now,
Yeah.
in Hampden County, if you do Trend Graphics right now in Hampden County, and you wanna see absorption rate, there's 13.5% months of inventory in the market right now. And if you look at the chart, it literally, gang, and I'm sharing this with you with a few of you in the room, the chart goes like this. It's a great visual. It goes like this, and then it goes right off the page up to 13.5. That's what the graph looks like when you print it out in Trend Graphics. It's a very powerful visual. It doesn't say it takes 13.5 months to sell the home. Don't get confused. It's 13.5 months worth of inventory on the market. And so that would take that long to get every single one of the properties sold in the market. But if you compare it to last year, the year before, it was half that, okay? So that's another great visual, John, that we could use to tell them why I need a 6-month listing agreement. In fact, we should even I should really wanna take 9 just to be sure because of your price range that you're in. And then there's a whole way of handling that objection too. Is it that you think that I'm not going to get the properties, do you think that when I take the listing, I'm just gonna rest on my laurels? Is that why you want a shorter listing? And if they say yes, say, well, then you pull out the what? The 30-day marketing guarantee. See, I had an objection handling tool for every objection they could possibly have. You have a problem, I have a solution. You have an objection, I have an answer. And here's what's great about real estate, and Ken, we brought it up last week, I'll bring it up this week again. There is a finite number of objections that you can get hit with in this real estate sales business. They're not an infinite, so you don't have to learn an infinite amount of things. There are a finite number of things that sellers and buyers say to you to object. to moving forward, to doing something that you know is going to help them. Right? Yes, Lauren?
Do you wanna say too, I think you might have said this before, that, you're not guaranteeing that that you know, will sell, that you can sell it, but you're guaranteeing that you're gonna do the most
Yes.
to sell. I mean, is that the point you said?
Absolutely.
When they
Yep.
go for, well,
I tell
so
them
you're
that, look,
telling me you're gonna sell my house, you know, I think.
right, yeah, I
I
don't,
think you can get entangled in that, that's
yeah,
all my.
I'm very clear with them, about it, and I say, listen, I'm not saying I'm gonna sell your house in 30
Right.
years. What I'm saying is that,
You're gonna do
here are a
more.
list of things that I'm gonna do right here, to get
You're
your
gonna
home sold.
Basically do more than anything
My
else.
commitment to you is I am gonna do every single one of these things in the first 30 days. Let me tell you something, people get really impressed with that. They're like, wow. And if I don't, you can fire me. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what I don't think is fair, I don't think it's fair that my competitors are asking you to sign a 6-month listing agreement and you can't fire them if they don't do their job. Let me ask you a question, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. If you went to your job, if you went to your work next Monday and you didn't do your job for 6 months, would you get fired? Yeah. I don't think it's fair that my competitors are asking you to be put in that situation where you can't let them go. Don't you agree? Yeah. You can hear a pin drop when we talk about it, right? So by doing all these things in the beginning, I'm gonna take advantage of when your property is new and get the most amount of activity done when you get the most amount of activity on a property when it is new. I'm gonna strike while the iron is what? Hot, right? I'm gonna make it all happen right away. Now, it also doesn't mean, Mr. and Mrs. Sell, I'm gonna do all this marketing for 30 days and then just stop. Here are a list of things that are going to continue to be working for you. For instance, this video is gonna be working for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for as long as we have the listing. Okay, gang? And guess what, some of you are afraid to do this. Why would an agent be afraid to put that guarantee out there? Why? It's
They
fair
might not.
loss again, gang, what is it?
You can't get it done.
You're afraid what?
Afraid you won't do it all.
Afraid you won't do it all, right? And if you use all these techniques that I'm sharing with you now, you might get so many listings that you might not be able to do it all. Well, listen, I got into that situation, and that was the first opportunity that I learned that I needed to hire what?
Assistant.
I needed help. I needed to get an assistant. I thought, wow, I can't do all these things. And I'm telling you, gang, if I wanted the listing, based on what I've shared with you just today alone, can you see how I'd get it if I wanted it? Can you see how you could get the listing if you wanted, if you went in like this? And do you have any competition now? See, when you went into this room today, you only had 4 or 5 competitors. It's not the 1,000 competitors that you have, agents that you have out in the market. You really only have 4 or 5 competitors out in the marketplace. But I'm guaranteeing you, without a shadow of a doubt, they are not doing all this stuff right now. Why? It's too much work, maybe, right? You know, it's more work to spend 2 hours preparing a market analysis, doing what you're doing now, and going to the property and not getting it. That's too much work. And if you're going on 10 listing appointments and you're only getting 4 or 3, that's too much work. I'd rather see you do all this work, get fully prepared, go out there, guns a-blazing, fully prepared, bringing all your stuff with you, taking hours of preparation, spending a couple of hours at the house, and getting it if you want it. Of course, based on the premise that you've pre-qualified them before you do all this stuff. You've asked them all the questions that we shared with you earlier on how to pre-qualify the seller before you commit yourself to doing all this work. Okay, gang? They need to sell, they wanna sell, they can sell, all those things have to be in place. Time's up. I will stay here for additional questions, but we're gonna stop the DVD now and end the seminar. Email me if you'd like, or if you have any questions. Did I give you some good tools today that will help you make a few more transactions?
Great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming here today. I appreciate it.
John?
Yes, just a second, I want to shut the DVD off. Yes. Yeah.
Leave the clipboard.
Yeah, leave the clipboards.
Oh, I'm
Thanks,
just
John.
walking away with it.